Hello, this is Captivating Recaps here. While some Sunjin High School students study in the classroom, the episode starts with some playing football. At the exact moment, many enigmatic spheres can be seen hovering and engulfing the whole city. Kim Ji-yeol and Kim Deok-jung, two classmates, talk about the mysterious extraterrestrial orbs hanging in the sky for almost a year after class. We learn from this that various scientists have studied the spheres and have determined that they are not dangerous to people. Nobody knows where it originated from, but the fact that they are not deadly gives the population some relief. Ji-yeol attempts to speak with Yang-hoon, the top student who experiences frequent bullying but has remained strong as they leave. Sadly, Yang-hoon passes him by and rides the bus home. He watches a YouTube presentation about the spheres and the myths around them while he travels. Lee, one of the well-known troops, is first presented while the military examines a crashed sphere. When the troops fail to hit the ball after being told to fire at it, their commander proposes firing an RPG rocket. A loud blast is heard when the soldier fires at the sphere. Then several purple animals begin to poke their heads out of it. In other places, the kids return to school after their customary 4-week vacation and quickly continue their pranks and rivalries. Park Eun-young, their homeroom teacher, gives report cards, but is called away before she can start the class. When Eun-young returns, she announces that early college applications have been canceled while exuding unease. The class's top pupils are concerned and perplexed, while the rest are content and relieved. The kids start talking among themselves, and the classroom grows agitated despite the teacher's attempts to continue the lecture. The instructor then switches on the television, and the pupils watch as the defense minister addresses the country. The minister declares a nationwide mobilization, requiring the military to enlist even third-grade high school pupils. The minister reassured them that education would still be emphasized and that students would gain additional credit for college entrance due to this shocking announcement, which shocked everyone. The instructor then explains to the class that to get additional credit, participation in military training is required. The military arrives at the school to prepare for the training after she departs. The following day, the pupils show up at school with their favorite stuff, such as cosmetics and luxuries they feel they cannot live without. The instructor then introduces the class platoon commander as First Lieutenant Lee. Lee announces that the training will occur after regular sessions as the briefing begins. He also reveals that the children will go through many weeks of military training and won't be permitted to leave the school starting today. The class president, Yu-jong, is chosen right away to serve as the group's leader, while Ji-yeol is entrusted with recording everything that happens throughout the training. If a pupil disobeys the commander's commands, they will lose points and be penalized. Sergeant Wonbin then guides the students to the appropriate dorms after explaining. After putting their stuff away, they quickly assemble to participate in training in the playground. The military gives the pupils weapons in the scenario that follows, although several of them voice hesitations about being trusted with them. A few people have started experimenting with firearms to demonstrate their expertise in online gaming. Lieutenant Lee shows up shortly after and controls the students' chaos. The guilty are then punished by being forced to run non-stop until they pass out. Surprisingly, despite the rigorous training, several female students succumb to the lieutenant's charm and are seduced by his good looks. The kids eventually return to their barracks, exhausted and shattered. Some people write notes for their parents throughout the record-keeping process, feeling betrayed by the experience, while others sob for their moms. Later that evening, a youngster named Il-ha uploaded a video showing the soldiers brutally shooting and murdering animals. According to Deok-jung, mass murders only happen when a virus spreads across a metropolis or a war erupts. Young-hoon attempts to leave the room while discussing this, but the commotion draws in Lieutenant Lee. Young-hoon responds by saying that Il-ha took his phone to the training in reaction to his criticism of him for attempting to escape by himself. Il-ha becomes enraged when Lieutenant Lee takes his phone after hearing this. He takes this as an opportunity to get revenge on Young-hoon, and the two nearly fight. Lieutenant Lee immediately orders them outdoors as punishment, but even there they fight. Fortunately, Chi-yeol shows in and stops the situation from getting worse by calming things down. The three pupils are immediately in front of a vast sphere that just happened to descend on the school building. Amid their argument, however, they choose not to report it, and Kwon Il-ha pulls Yong-hoon into the sphere. Surprisingly, the sphere changes into a hideous being that entangles Yong-hoon's body and consumes him alive. It looks like an octopus. Chi-yeol is horrified and tries to approach the beast, but Lieutenant Lee stops him just as he arrives on the scene. The monster then retracts, taking the form of a ball, and leaves the area. Later, Ms. Eun-young, the homeroom teacher, is shocked to hear of Yong-hoon's death. Lieutenant Lee tells her he has been instructed to keep the facts hidden and take proper military action, when she tremblingly advises sending the remaining pupils home. He advises Eun-young to convince the pupils to remain silent about Yong-hoon's death to prevent panic. Il-ha and Chi-yeol also lie to their classmates about Yong-hoon's departure after realizing they have no choice but to do so. They would claim that he was seriously hurt and sent home. When the school returns to normal, it becomes apparent that the sphere is not their only danger. The students are involved in a deadly plot while the government and military attempt to conceal something more evil. On the other hand, Lieutenant Lee is plagued by the traumatic recollection of what occurred to his division when they came across a sphere while utilizing an RPG gun. There were several fatalities due to the sphere's explosion and its fierce onslaught. The kids worry about the weird sphere that crashed into the school building the night before the following day. Il-ha and Chi-yeol remain silent since they are still upset over the occurrence. Military Commander Park Yong-il urges for stepping up the pupils' training in self-defense and firearms after the sphere came perilously near the school. Lieutenant Lee is first apprehensive, but eventually accepts the importance of the choice. The students accept the strategy and begin going to their new lessons. As might be predicted, most people find firearms training complex, but not Lee Na-rae. She easily controls the guns and fires them precisely at the intended target. As the days pass, the training continues as the pupils learn vital life-saving techniques like CPR and record messages for their parents. They gradually get used to their new normal, and Chi-yeol develops feelings for Na-rae. When Chi-yeol has a nightmare one night, she goes to Lee Na-rae in the classroom for support. Then, as they each return to their respective barracks, Chi-yeol's increasing affections for Na-rae become even more apparent. In the following scene, Lieutenant Lee inspects the sphere that landed on the school property. The military has apparently frozen and covered it with a hollow dome, but they still know little about the sphere. The kids are ready to leave the school grounds the following day to practice shooting with actual bullets. They are shocked to see no one on the streets as they stroll through them. As far as the eye can see, not a single person is present. After some time, the training starts, and the pupils are first startled by the sound of gunshots, but they quickly become used to it. As anticipated, Na-rae performs very well, confidently striking the targets. Her performance astounds everyone, and the troops compliment her as well. Lieutenant Lee gives the order for everyone to keep together and wait while they make their way back after hearing a loud boom in the distance. But taking advantage of the occasion, two brats decide to stop at a gas station they passed on the way for some food. When they get there, they discover it is empty, so they quickly get some food they desire. When the teacher Park Eun-young learns of this, she seizes the initiative and contacts the army immediately to begin looking for the missing pupils. Kook Young-soo, a different student, then provides her with a tip that the brats could have gone to the neighborhood convenience shop. So without further ado, Eun-young and Kim Yi-young, a senior student, race to locate them. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Lee and Sergeant Kim Won-bin get concerned after seeing a sizable crater left by the sphere. The two also follow a trail of blood on the ground to look into it. Yu-young sees a pistol lying next to the road But when she goes to pick it up, she discovers that it is being held by a mutilated hand. She shouts out of fright, waking the instructor and other kids up. As Eun-young continues to follow the blood trail, she eventually comes across bizarre tentacle monsters and the corpses of students from different schools. She yells for the children to escape as she is shocked and scared. The monsters are startled by the commotion surrounding them, abruptly springing to life and assaulting the group. To defend the pupils, teacher Park Eun-young pulls a pistol and fires haphazardly at the monsters, but she ultimately runs out of ammunition and is slain by one of them. The students are forced to run as the spheres decapitate a second soldier who tries to save them. They encounter more corpses and spheres as they flee through the streets. The troops encourage the students to continue advancing and not give up despite the commotion and uncertainty. However, other pupils, like Hana, are paralyzed by dread, particularly after seeing their instructor die before them. She locks herself inside a vehicle and forbids her pals from entering. Thankfully, Sergeant Kim Won-bin can reunite most of the children, but they continue to be concerned about what will happen to those still missing. In other scenes, we witness the brats in the convenience shop having a little meal while unaware of the outside mayhem. They see one of the enigmatic animals as they prepare to depart and start playing with it, not realizing the severe risk it poses. However, when it assaults them suddenly, they rapidly lose their fun demeanor, realizing that the sphere is not as innocuous as it first seems. When this happens, the brats start fighting ferociously to survive. Ultimately, however, they successfully capture the beast in the freezer. To their surprise, it finally dies in colder temperatures after becoming dormant. The other kids are also struggling for their lives, helping one another and fending off the odd monsters. They ultimately come together again under the direction of Lieutenant Lee and Kim Won-bin, but what they have seen has left them deeply rattled. Later, when everyone is gathered together, Kim Won-bin gives Lieutenant Lee an update on the fatalities and gives him a watch that belonged to one of the fallen soldiers. Additionally, he says that he has given each pupil 3 rounds to use in a gunfight with the monsters. After that, Lieutenant Lee addresses the class and explains that the spheres are the enemy for which he has been training them to battle. He suddenly notices movement and commands the pupils to follow him while holding their guns ready, only to find that it's the 2 brats. A flashback then shows Lieutenant Lee's background, showing how he first opposed the military's intention to recruit high school kids, but finally decided to teach them and give them an opportunity. Hana apologizes to her pals for not unlocking the door sooner, as the students enter their classroom in the present. Meanwhile, the kids are in a panic, and some are hurriedly collecting their possessions to leave. Hana attempts to reassure them, but their anxieties have already set in. Fortunately, Lieutenant Lee shows up there and tells them to have a seat. He tells them that school is the safest place since it is hazardous outside. He also emphasizes that this is the only location where they may practice self-defense. The pupils then choose to cast a vote on whether to remain or go home once he departs. Except for Young Soo, everyone votes to depart. He still wants to take the military examination to get more credit. Sadly, this merely inflames the bully, Il-ha, who then attacks Young Soo. Most kids believe that the adults are taking advantage of them while this is happening, making them angry and helpless. They cast their ballots once again, but Young Soo decides to hang on. Il-ha, therefore, loses his cool and assaults him savagely once again. Yu-young and Young Shin, the student leaders, meet with Lieutenant Lee to address the issue after the heated vote. The shocker is that the latter informs them they have no place to return to. He says it will be very difficult to trace their parents right now, and that they will most likely live in a shelter. The lieutenant continues by stating that they cannot afford to flee since they are now participating in a war. The other pupils are enraged and depressed after hearing this news. Lieutenant Lee pushes the pupils to the breaking point during training the next night. Some even sob and beg to stop, saying they are at their breaking point. Sergeant Kim Wonbin later promises the students that they are trying to eliminate the critters as they lament their predicament. Lieutenant Lee remembers how the military sought to develop weapons that might eliminate them as he traveled to examine the sphere that fell on the school grounds. After several tries and mistakes, they determined that the tiny spheres could only be destroyed by ammunition made of depleted uranium. Unfortunately, they were short on troops and ammo, so they enlisted high school kids to help them battle the spheres. The kids gathered to discuss their escape strategies after supper. Sending a group to inquire whether their parents have been brought to a shelter is their first item of business. The lads, including Chiyo, who lives closest to the school, are picked. Later, as they try to carry out their plan, troops see them and stop them from leaving. This starts a protracted pursuit that ends with their capture. Lieutenant Lee punishes everyone for the attempted escape, stressing that they are now soldiers, not privileged students. They will face a court-martial and death if they desert, he forewarns them. The students leave this and return to their barracks, furious and embarrassed. They haven't given up on their escape strategy yet, either. After lunch, Commander Park Young-il and his men stage a demonstration to stop the students from leaving. As Lieutenant Lee comes to remind the pupils of the importance of the next academic exam, he takes out his revolver and fires a warning shot. However, they don't give in and won't be persuaded by the prospect of credit points. A spherical suddenly descends into chaos, setting off a furious onslaught. It is already too late for the children to return to their classrooms despite Lieutenant Lee's best efforts. The spheres have fallen upon them. The troops bravely engage in combat to repel the attack while defending the pupils. Sadly, despite their best attempts to save one another, most of the kids cannot flee the attack. Commander Park Young-il decides to leave his soldiers behind and escape in his automobile, only to meet a horrifying end. Yu-yung steps in and organizes some pupils to flee for the classrooms as mayhem breaks out and more lethal spheres fall upon them. Despite his best efforts, Sergeant Wonbin cannot rescue a fellow soldier, but Young Shin can locate and protect his love. Fortunately, Nare shows she is a brave and capable soldier by grabbing a rifle and accurately shooting the deadly spheres down. Her courage saves many lives, and it motivates others to keep fighting. Lieutenant Lee and Sergeant Wonbin plan how to guide the kids to safety as the situation becomes more perilous. They equip the youngsters, tell them to get their kit from the barracks, and describe their escape route before giving them specific instructions. The pupils must follow their example and rush toward the bottom level as Nare covers them. Lieutenant Lee tells them to flee toward the trucks when they eventually get to the military vehicles outside. Nare continues to provide cover as the pupils arm themselves and aim at any dangers. Sadly, some pupils are left behind, and not everyone arrives at the vehicle in time. As the episode ends, Lieutenant Lee successfully stops the truck in time for Sergeant Wonbin to board and take off for safety. To support the channel, switch on the notification feature, subscribe for more videos like this, and leave a like. I appreciate you watching.